Hello, everyone, and welcome to this magical story. Today, I bring you an adventure filled with bravery, cleverness, and surprises. Hansel and Gretel. Join me on this incredible journey through the enchanted forest, where we will find a house made of sweets, a wicked witch, and a very important lesson. Get ready to enjoy this classic tale like never before. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in the heart of a deep, dark forest, there lived a humble woodcutter with his two children, Hansel and Gretel, and his wife. Though the woodcutter was a kind and hardworking man, poverty loomed over them like a dark shadow. Food was scarce, and each passing day, their despair grew heavier. Winter was approaching, bringing a terrible famine across the land. The rivers began to freeze, the animals fled in search of food, and the leafless trees groaned under the biting wind. One night, as the children lay in their straw beds, their stepmother whispered to their father, "We do not have enough food for all of us. If we keep the children, we will surely starve. The only solution is to take them deep into the forest and leave them there." The woodcutter gasped in horror. "That is unthinkable. They are our children. How could we abandon them to the cruel night?" But the woman was relentless, reminding him that without the children, at least the two of them could survive. They argued for hours in the darkness, and though the woodcutter fought against his conscience, in the end, despair won. However, Hansel was still awake and had heard everything. His heart pounded with fear, but he clenched his fists, determined to save his sister. As soon as the house fell silent and his parents were asleep, he crept outside and gathered small, shiny pebbles from the ground, tucking them into his pocket before slipping back into bed unnoticed. At dawn, the stepmother woke the children with a sweet but false smile. "Come, little ones. Today we will gather firewood in the forest." Taking their small hands, she led them deep into the woods, where the trees were so tall that they blocked out the sun. But Hansel, clever as he was, secretly dropped the pebbles along the path as they walked. Eventually, they reached a clearing where the stepmother said, "Rest here while we collect wood. We will come back for you soon." But the children waited and waited until night fell and their parents never returned. The moon rose, casting silver light upon the forest, and to their relief, the pebbles Hansel had dropped gleamed in the darkness. Following the trail, the children found their way home, exhausted and starving. The stepmother was furious when she saw them return, but hid her anger behind another cold smile. The very next day, she insisted they be taken even farther into the woods. That night, Hansel tried to collect more pebbles, but the stepmother had locked the door, preventing him from going outside. With no other choice, he crumbled a piece of bread and hid the crumbs in his pocket, hoping they would serve as a guide. The next morning, the stepmother led them even deeper into the forest, where the trees whispered secrets to each other and shadows danced with the wind. Again, she left them behind, promising to return. As night fell, Hansel took his sister's hand and whispered, "Do not be afraid, Gretel. I left a trail of breadcrumbs to guide us home." But when they looked down, their hearts sank. The breadcrumbs had vanished, eaten by the hungry birds of the forest. Now truly lost, the children wandered aimlessly. For days they walked, growing weaker with hunger and exhaustion. Their hope faded like morning mist, until suddenly they saw something that made them gasp in amazement. Through the trees, they spotted a strange little house, unlike any they had ever seen. Its walls were made of gingerbread, its roof was covered in chocolate, and its windows sparkled with sugar. A delicious scent filled the air, making their stomachs rumble. Without thinking, they ran to the house and began breaking off pieces, stuffing them into their mouths with joy. Just then, the door creaked open, and an old woman stepped outside. Her wrinkled face stretched into a strange smile. "Nibble, nibble, little mice," she croaked. "Who is eating my house so nice?" Startled, the children froze. But the old woman smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, dear children, you must be so hungry. Come inside, and I will give you more food." Unaware of her true nature, Hansel and Gretel followed her inside. The house was warm and cozy, with a great wooden table covered in delicious food: cakes, fruits, fresh bread, and creamy milk. Tears of relief filled their eyes as they ate until they could eat no more. But as soon as they had finished, the old woman revealed her true self. She was an evil witch who feasted on children. In an instant, she grabbed Hansel and locked him inside a small iron cage. "I will fatten you up, little boy, and when you are plump enough, I shall eat you." Then she turned to Gretel. "And you, girl, shall be my servant." Terrified, Gretel was forced to cook and clean while the witch fed Hansel enormous meals to make him grow fatter. Every day, she pinched his arms, checking if he was ready to be eaten. But Hansel, clever as always, used an old chicken bone to trick her, holding it out when she reached for his hand. The witch, nearly blind, grumbled, "Why are you still so thin?" At last, impatient, she decided to cook him anyway. "Gretel, light the oven," she ordered, but Gretel had an idea. She approached the oven and asked innocently, "I do not know how. Can you show me?" Sighing, the witch leaned over to demonstrate. In that moment, Gretel gathered all her courage and, with one mighty shove, pushed the witch inside. She slammed the door shut, and the witch shrieked as the flames consumed her. Gretel rushed to free Hansel from the cage, and together they explored the witch's house. In a hidden chest, they found gold coins and sparkling jewels. Filling their pockets with as much treasure as they could carry, they set off to find their way home. After walking for hours, they reached a wide river. A graceful white swan appeared, offering them a ride across. Once on the other side, they recognized the path, and in the distance, they saw something that filled their eyes with tears of joy. Their home. The woodcutter, who had regretted his terrible decision every day since, ran to them and embraced them tightly. Their stepmother, however, had died. Hansel and Gretel poured the jewels onto the floor, and from that day forward, they never suffered from hunger or poverty again. Together, they live happily ever after. Moral: bravery and intelligence can overcome even the darkest of times. And that's the end of the amazing story of Hansel and Gretel. This adventure teaches us that courage and intelligence can help us overcome any obstacle. I hope you enjoyed this tale as much as I did. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more magical stories. See you in the next tale. Goodbye.